Waitress's bag bursts with cash. What her boss uncovers next is unthinkable. The smell of burnt grease clung to the walls, the buzzing fluorescent lights casting long, sickly shadows across the empty booths. Somewhere, a fan rattled against the heavy summer night. Grant Weston tightened his grip on the greasy spatula, heart hammering against his ribs. Behind the kitchen's battered swinging door, laughter floated from the dining area, oblivious, ordinary. They had no idea the man scrubbing the grill, dressed like every other weary line cook, was actually the new owner, and Grant wasn't here to flip burgers. He was here to uncover the rot buried deep inside the soul of West Side Diner. 3 weeks earlier, Grant had slipped into the building under the name Greg Stevens, a plan born out of desperation and suspicion. His financial advisor's words still echoed in his mind. You want to know what you're buying? Get your hands dirty. And so he had. Day after grueling day, he learned the truth. Darla the waitress skimmed bills. Marco the head cook lazily microwaved chili, passing it off as homemade. Pete, the weekend manager, vanished for hour-long breaks. The diner was a crumbling kingdom of secrets, but no secret unsettled him more than Maya Torres. Maya, the quiet waitress who floated through her shifts with mechanical grace, her dark eyes distant, her tips mysteriously higher than anyone else's. Maya, who never gossiped, never lingered after her shifts, never smiled like she meant it. Maya, who disappeared into the night with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, her figure swallowed by the streetlights. It had been an accident, really. A brush of his elbow against her locker door, slightly ajar, a worn duffel bag tumbling to the floor, a zipper giving way, and a thick bundle of cash spilling out onto the scuffed linoleum. Not just one bundle. Dozens, tens of thousands of dollars. Grant's mind raced with accusations. Drugs, theft, blackmail. His chest constricted with the crushing certainty that Maya, the quiet one, was the worst of them all. That night, hidden behind his rusted car, Grant watched as Maya met a hooded figure beneath the flickering street lamp. He saw her hand something over, saw the man nod and melt into the darkness. Grant gripped his keys, so hard they cut into his palm. Something terrible was happening at his diner, and Maya was at the heart of it. The rumors spread like wildfire the next day. Tips missing from cash drawers. Whispered accusations. Darla's voice, thick with smoke and suspicion, seeping into his ears. She's stealing. I'd bet my last tip on it. And Grant wanted to believe it. He needed to believe it. But something gnawed at him. Something about Maya's eyes. The sadness there. The desperation. A week passed in the blur of surveillance. Grant traded sleep for answers, trailing Maya to her bus stop, watching her disappear into the night. He saw the same exchange again and again, Maya meeting the hooded man, handing over something small. Money? Drugs? Secrets? Until morning, her locker stood open and empty, the duffel bag gone. Called in sick, Darla said with a smirk. First time ever. Grant didn't wait. He drove straight to the modest apartment address listed in the employee file. He stood at her door, sweaty palms, heart hammering, telling himself this was about justice, not curiosity, not guilt. The door opened. Maya stood there, pale and trembling. And in that instant, Grant knew something was wrong. Terribly, achingly wrong. Inside, there was no evidence of luxury, no signs of stolen wealth, just a sagging couch, peeling wallpaper, and a table buried under papers, medical bills, insurance rejections, fundraising flyers. And there, pinned to the wall, a gold chart for $75,000, barely reaching the first mark. A photograph caught his eye. A young man, radiant with a glow of life, cradling a saxophone like a precious secret. His name is Raymond, Maya said, her voice cracking. He needs help. The words poured out of her. Raymond Ellis, once a rising star in the jazz world, reduced to ashes by a fire that stole his face's hands, his future. Homeless, forgotten, invisible. Maya had found him playing broken melodies outside the subway station, his music still pure even as his body failed him. She worked double shifts at the diner, moonlighted at a jazz club under a different name. Every penny she earned went to saving Raymond's life, to surgeries that might give him back a fraction of what he'd lost. The duffel bag was not a stash of ill-gotten gains. It was hope, fragile, desperate hope. And the missing diner tips? Maya's dark eyes flashed with anger. Darla's son, Kevin, slipping into the back door to steal from server stations. Maya had seen it, confronted Darla, and been rewarded with a smear campaign. Grant's world tilted. He had judged her, condemned her, and now he saw her for what she was, the only soul in that cursed diner who hadn't given up. But the story didn't end there. Grant pointed to a photograph of Raymond, a tremor in his voice. "I know him." From his wallet, he pulled an old family photo, a boyish man with a saxophone, laughter frozen in time. "That's my uncle," Grant whispered. "Raymond Weston." Years ago, Raymond had stormed out of family Christmas after a bitter fight over his addictions. The family said he died. But he hadn't. He had been burning alive just streets away, while they pretended he didn't exist. It wasn't fate that brought Grant to the diner. It was blood. The next day, Grant watched Raymond from a distance at St. Michael's shelter. The man was gaunt, scarred beyond recognition, his music barely a whisper. But Grant saw it. The same stubborn till of the chin, the same glint of mischief in the eyes. Raymond didn't recognize him. How could he? Grant wasn't ready to reveal himself. Not yet. He needed to earn the right. At West Side Diner, Grant dropped the mask. He called a staff meeting, stunned his employees with the truth. He was their boss. He was the owner, and he had seen everything. He fired Darla on the spot, her sputtering protest drowned out by the stunned silence. He promoted Maya, made her director of community outreach, matching every dollar she had raised for Raymond. The diner transformed overnight. The walls grew warmer. The food tasted richer. The tips poured in for the new second chance. Fun jar on the counter. And Raymond? He endured the first grueling surgeries, each one a step back toward the light. It should have been the end of the story, but fate wasn't finished. As the local paper ran a glowing feature on Maya's foundation, an old detective stumbled across a dusty file buried in archives, a file marked, "Weston family, suspected arson, unsolved." The fire that had scarred Raymond, that had destroyed his life, hadn't been an accident, and the name scribbled in the margin, barely legible, a name Grant knew, a name from the diner. A name he trusted. The past wasn't just reaching out for Raymond. It was reaching for Grant, too. And this time, it wouldn't stop until it burned everything he loved to ash. The weight of the discovery pressed against Grant's chest as he stood alone in his office long after the last customer had left West Side Diner. In his trembling hands was the dusty file the reporter had uncovered, its yellowed pages whispering secrets that refused to stay buried. A single name under the suspect list, scrawled hastily in faded ink, leapt off the page like a curse. Peter Malloy. Pete, the same Pete who had been the weekend manager, the man Grant had trusted to help run the diner when he wasn't around. The man who had been a constant presence since Grant first stepped into Westside as an undercover line cook. Pete, whose casual smile now twisted in Grant's memory into something far more sinister. Grant's mind reeled. Pete had been there the night Raymond's life went up in flames. And worse, he had been working at the diner, watching, hiding in plain sight all along. A million questions screamed for answers. Had Pete started the fire? Had he meant to hurt Raymond? Was he even targeting Raymond at all? Or was it something deeper, something even darker? The next morning, Grant arrived at the diner before sunrise. The air was thick and heavy, a storm brewing on the horizon. Maya was already there, organizing donations for the foundation, her eyes bright with hope. Grant couldn't bring himself to shatter that hope. Not yet. He spent the morning pretending everything was normal. Every polite nod from Pete feeling like a dagger aimed at his back. But Grant wasn't just waiting. He was watching, studying, piecing together years of silent betrayal with every stolen glance and awkward smile. It wasn't until late that evening, after the diner's doors were locked and the lights dimmed, that Grant confronted him. Pete was counting down the till, whistling a tuneless song under his breath. Grant stepped into the office, heart pounding, the file tucked beneath his arm. "Pete," he said, voice low and steady, "we need to talk." Pete looked up, eyebrows raised. "Smile easy." "Sure, boss. What's on your mind?" Grant tossed the file onto the desk between them. It landed with a heavy thud, the accusation thick in the air. Pete's smile faltered as he glanced at the cover, recognition flashing across his face before he masked it behind a carefully neutral expression. "You were there," Grant said, each word a hammer blow. "The night the fire started. The night Raymond's life was destroyed." Pete leaned back, crossing his arms, a slow, almost mocking smile curling his lips. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Grant hissed. "Your name is in the report. Witnesses saw you arguing with someone outside the restaurant that night, minutes before the fire." For a long moment, Pete said nothing. Then he shrugged, casual, almost bored. "So what if I was there?" "People argue. Fires happen. Coincidences, boss." But Grant could see the truth now, written in the stiffness of Pete's shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Pete wasn't just some bystander. He was part of it. Grant pressed harder. "What were you arguing about, Pete? Money? Drugs? Was Raymond in your way?" Pete's face darkened. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You don't want to dig into things you don't understand, Weston. Some fires are better left to burn out on their own." The threat hung in the air between them. Grant didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of the truth." Pete sneered. "You should be." Before Grant could respond, Pete shoved back on the desk and stormed out, the door slamming so hard it rattled the windows. Grant stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed his phone and dialed Maya. "Stay with Raymond," he said urgently. "Don't leave him alone." Because Grant knew with a sick certainty that Pete wasn't finished yet. The next 48 hours blurred into a haze of fear and adrenaline. Grant hired private security for Raymond's new apartment above the diner. He filed a report with the police, handing over the file and everything he'd learned. But the system moved slow, too slow for a man like Pete who already had decades of practice disappearing into the cracks. Then one night it happened. Grant was closing up when he heard the crash upstairs. He raced up the back stairs, heart pounding, to find Raymond's door hanging off its hinges, the frame splintered from a heavy blow. Inside, chaos. Furniture overturned, paper scattered, and Raymond's battered saxophone lying in the middle of the room, its delicate body twisted and broken. But no sign of Raymond. Grant's stomach dropped. Maya appeared behind him, eyes wide with terror. "Where is he?" Grant didn't answer. He tore through the apartment, calling Raymond's name, fear clawing at his throat. Then he saw it. A smear of blood on the wall, a trail leading down the fire escape. Grant and Maya followed the trail through the darkened streets, every shadow a threat, every sound a trap. The trail led them to the abandoned rail yard on the edge of town, a wasteland of rusted metal and broken dreams. In the distance, they saw movement. Two figures struggling, one slumped, the other dragging. Grant sprinted forward, Maya close behind. It was Pete, dragging Raymond's unconscious body toward a waiting car, parked just beyond the shattered fence line. "Pete!" Grant roared. Pete turned, wild-eyed, and for a moment, Grant saw the man he really was. Not the smiling manager, not the helpful co-worker, but a predator cornered and desperate. Pete pulled something from his belt. A knife. Maya screamed. Grant didn't hesitate. He launched himself at Pete, tackling him to the ground. They grappled, fists in fury, the knife flashing in the moonlight. It was a brutal, clumsy fight, fueled by fear and rage and betrayal. But Grant had something Pete didn't. He had something worth fighting for. With a final, desperate surge, Grant wrenched the knife from Pete's hand and pinned him to the ground as sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer. Police lights bathed the rail yard in flashing red and blue as officers poured in, guns drawn, shouting orders. Pete was dragged away, cursing and snarling like a trapped animal. Grant cradled Raymond's broken body, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Promises of safety, of healing, of family. In the hospital, as Raymond fought for his life once again, Grant sat vigil. Maya never left his side. Together, they watched over the man who had lost everything, and yet still clung to hope. Pete was charged with multiple crimes: arson, assault, kidnapping, attempted murder. His past finally caught up with him, dragging him into the light he had spent decades avoiding. Raymond recovered slowly, each day a battle, but a battle he no longer fought alone. The Second Chance Foundation exploded with support. Donations poured in. Volunteers signed up. Musicians from across the country came to West Side Diner to perform in Raymond's honor. The diner became a symbol, not just of good food, but of resilience, of redemption, of the incredible things that can happen when people refuse to give up on each other. Grant rebuilt the upstairs apartments into safe housing for people like Raymond, the forgotten, the broken, the ones the world had cast aside. And late at night, when the rush was over and the lights were low, you could hear it again, soft and halting at first, but growing stronger with each passing day. Music, Raymond's music, not perfect, but real, full of pain and hope and triumph. And Grant, sitting at the counter with a cup of black coffee, listening to the rebirth of a man everyone else had written off, knew he had found something worth more than any fortune he could have made. He had found purpose. He had found family. He had found home. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that everyone deserves a second chance, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Beyond True Crime. Share this story and help us shine a light on the hidden battles happening all around us. Because sometimes saving one life can change the world. And sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that almost went unheard.